Welcome everybody to the show. This is Counterclipping show number 222 for May 12th, 2025, and I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. The topic tonight is inspiring wargames, and we're going to talk about what wargames me, and anybody else who wants to participate in the chat have found inspirational in some way or another. We'll get to that in a few minutes. In the meantime, we are clipping Advanced Squad Leader. We are drinking Glenmorangie Lasanta, bottled at 40% once again. Pretty good chance it'll be gone soon. But probably not tonight. I've got a long day. Just like today, I've got a long day ahead of me tomorrow. So I will throw a link to the Ardwulf Lair Discord community in the chat. So if anybody is not a member yet, please sign up. Unless you're not on Discord, in which case I guess don't. But that's cool too. But it's a cool place, and folks are having a good time and having some good conversations there. So I'd like to encourage everybody to like the video, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and a big shout out to the patrons of Ardwulf Lair, without whose help we would not be able to keep doing this. And also a big shout out to our good friends at Noble Knight Games, who are the official sponsors of the Counterclipping show and from whom we will see a little bit later. So bill your packages out the door as of today via UPS. You should already have the tracking information. I apologize for the delay. There was a bunch of bullshit that went on. So I just couldn't get it up there until literally 5 p.m. today. So anyway, that's done. So where's the thing? I've lost the list of folks. All right, let's say hello to Bill Simone, Bob Meyer, Brian Jarvis, Chad Kennedy, Chet Bell, Christophe DeClerc, Daniel Silverthorne, Danny Seckery, Dave Poirier, David Imperato, David Zell, Ed Holtzman, Egret, Eric Goebel, James Whitmer, Jeff Beeler, Jeff Edwards, Joe Hammond, Joe Mentum. Somebody just popped in and I missed it. John Mogg, John Weeble, Kyle Harris, Lee Grant, Manders, Marty Sample is here. Michael Karlowski, Paul Dangle, Paul Sin, Perfidious Albion, Realtime 01, Rob Johnson, Scott Bell, Sean Milroy, Sean Sullivan, Snacky Limit, Stephen Rochelle, Stigler, Tim Greenhaw, Todd Cox, and Vicky. Vicky, thanks for stopping by once again. So, this sounds cool. Yeah, I actually am super interested in seeing this as a fan of Greg Blanchett's previous efforts from Compass in this space. So I am super intrigued by Spring Awakening, but I do not have it at this time. So in any case, hopefully we can get some of these British vehicles knocked out this evening. So before we get to the topic, I do have some personal-ish announcements to make. So there's before I get to that, there's ways to support the channel, all of which are linked in the video description. Pay particular attention to the Noble Knight affiliate link, because Noble Knight's Big Spring Sale is coming up, and I'm not allowed to tell you exactly when it goes live, but I can tell you it is not live now, but it will be live pretty soon. So if you're going to spend a bunch of money over there anyway, please use the affiliate link, and we will have a campaign update soon, and the next campaign update will be very exciting. I'm not ready to talk about that yet. My guess is that I won't be ready to talk about that for another 3 weeks, but that is a guess. Could be a week either way. Carol Fung, thanks for stopping by. And the legend himself, Fucko, is here. So miscellaneous business. I know that this has Ardwulf's Lair, okay, as an entity, has been around for 16, 17, I don't know, something like that now. I'd have to actually do math. I have not yet received a shipping notification for By Swords and Bayonets, which I'm not exactly in a tizzy about. It will happen sooner or later. So, Ardwulf's Lair originally started out as a blog, and then it became a YouTube channel where I did video game stuff, and then I got back into wargames and started doing wargame stuff, and here we are like 15, 10, 12, something like that years later. I have consistently done a little bit of role-playing, tabletop role-playing stuff on this channel. And I will not say that will cease. However, I will be launching an RPG-specific channel called RPG Digest. It is already set up on YouTube, so you can go follow up there if you want. I did not prepare a link, but I am going to largely keep the RPG stuff over there once it launches, which will happen in, according to plan, late June. So after the CSRs are out of the way, after Origins out of the way, after a number of other things that are going to happen between now and then are over. So I won't be able to... you need to worry more about getting my copy of Crimean War Quad back to me, actually. So... it does, I expect GMT to take a while to ship all the sales stuff. Let me put it that way. So, want a link. All right. Well, I don't have a link handy. So what I will give you instead is the link that I do have handy, which is the link to the ballot for the Charles S. Roberts Awards, that ballot is live. Voting has been pretty good so far. I am reasonably pleased with where we are at. Although I have done less promotional work than in previous years to try and get the word out. So if anybody wants to share that link around, feel free. And if you want to encourage your wargaming friends to vote, cool. That would be great. Brant, I know that I thought Brant has both of them. Okay, well that's fine, but I heard from Bill that he gave something to you. So, and I immediately said, "Oh, Jesus Christ. There's going to be problems, aren't there?" That's fine. That's pretty stupid. That's pretty stupid if that's an accurate summation of the actual issue. So we should have the results. So this is not the official deadline. The official deadline's in the charter, and it's like middle of July or something like that. We should have the awards, Hall of Fame, all that stuff announced sometime before Origins. That's kind of the unofficial target. And I'm targeting the 15th because... I don't want to have to worry about that during the week that I'm preparing for Origins. So everybody here is probably already voted, but if you haven't, feel free to share that around. So I noticed a couple publishers are already on top of sending out their own newsletters saying things like, "Hey, we got nominated for Charles S. Roberts Awards. Please vote for us." And we're not going to stop that. So if you want to throw the link into various wargaming communities, be my guest. So they're like I said, let me pull up the actual link though. Actually, well, hold on. I don't know if this will work or not. I hope it does. It does. How about that? All right. So here's a link to the RPG Digest channel. There's also a Discord server set up, but we'll wait to roll that out as well. Now, the reason why I've chosen that date, that sort of end of June time frame, is because I will also, around that time in the same general time frame, be starting an actual campaign. We have not yet determined an actual time slot for this yet, but I've started fishing around to see who's available when. Now, details. There will be I'm positive I will have more people that would like to play than I can actually accommodate. I can accommodate 5, and that's it. For patrons will get priority, and your patronage level will help to determine if there needs to be a tiebreaker or something like that. So there is no content on the new channel yet, and there won't be for at least a month. So there's that. People did bring back THAC0. I picked up Old School Essentials, and it uses THAC0. I don't know if it tells you that it uses THAC0 or not, but it does. We will be content for the what? No. Okay, so to be clear, I need to say this out loud. The new channel will not be broadcasting live play of anything anytime in the foreseeable future. So nobody needs to worry about that. The campaign will be Pathfinder, 2nd edition. It will not be Traveler. I am working on something for Traveler, but it's farther away. So this will be Pathfinder 2nd edition. It's going to be a very high fantasy flavored campaign with an exploration emphasis. So if anybody is interested in that, please wait for the notice that I will send out I'll actually make the announcement on this show and then send out a notice to the patrons. I should send out the notice to the patrons first, because that might fill the group up right there. So in any case, like THAC0, I guess. Where does one cast their votes for games? Are we talking about the CSR awards? I actually put the link. If you scroll up in the chat, you should see a link to a Google Forms document. That is the current ballot. So, in any case, I don't know. Well, I thought about it, and my idea was actually started out as a Harn idea, and I still have a Harn idea in the cooker too. But I mean, if I also don't intend to do live shows on the new channel, so I have enough live shows. Thank you. So there's that. I mean, there'll be an occasional special or something like that, but I have no plans to do live streaming of any kind on that new channel. So. OSE has an option for ascending AC, and I think all the monster stat blocks are listed with both. I believe I prefer ascending AC because it isn't dumb. So, because big numbers are good. Your armor class is higher, should be good. It just makes sense that way, and the only reason it never worked that way until relatively recently is because that's not how Gary and Dave did it back in 1974. So sorry about that, but there's not much. I remember it wasn't my idea; it was Work's idea to screw my personal calendar up for Tuesdays. So, in any case, I went through a kind of a long and somewhat tortuous decision-making process as far as determining exactly what, because I know what the campaign's about, right? As far as determining exactly what system would be best. Many systems were considered, including crazy stuff like Rollmaster. I mean, I dismissed that immediately, but I got it. It's on my list. I am mechanically comfortable with it, but I have more or less resigned myself to the fact that I'm never going to run Rollmaster again. If one of the local guys wants to run it and I'll play, that's cool. But in any case, I like Glass Cannon. I've never managed to successfully get into Critical Role, and I've talked about this before, and that's just the thing. I mean, admittedly, it's probably a good idea to start at the beginning, which if you start at the beginning, it's not really the real beginning. So there's that. I have Burning Wheel. It was not considered for this campaign. I have played Burning Wheel. It is, I think it's got many good ideas in it that are buried in a rule book that is not very good. That is my take on Burning Wheel. And when I played it, the game master was the game's designer, Luke Crane. So, and I considered the fantasy trip as well for Jeff Beeler, who was talking up Melee and Wizard. But I looking at one of the important considerations is the game's power curve, right? It is intended to be a progression-oriented game, so you will get more powerful as things go on. That doesn't require a level system, but level systems are generally good at that. That's one, and the fact that Pathfinder 2 is really mechanically tight, I think, was attractive. I have actually played, Phil B, thanks for stopping by, Forbidden Lands. I detest the setting. That's another personal choice thing. I just don't like it. I also don't like the Year Zero engine particularly. Their exploration rules are decent, but I have exploration rules that are just as good in Pathfinder 2. So I don't need Forbidden Lands. I will be okay with it. So that is the dope on that. And I know that I have talked about this as a sandbox hex crawl campaign. There will be a hex crawl element. The campaign will start with a hex crawl, but it will not necessarily be a hex crawl for 20 levels. That would be weird. So I anticipate, this is exactly why I'm doing it this way, so that I can not pester the wargaming folks with the RPG stuff. And those who want that stuff can go over to the other place and check it out. So, Drakenheim. I'm not sure I'm familiar with that particular product. So, in any case, I don't want to talk about that all night, but it's still pretty early. So let's have some more scotch. But yeah, I don't want to do live stream play. I'm not ready for live stream play. Nobody really wants to look at me for 4 hours. So I've looked at Dungeon Dudes too, actually. They're all right. There's a lot of channels. Right now, that channel is kind of there just as a watching channel. But we will have content on there sooner or later. Not necessarily a bazillion pieces of content per month. I intend to probably release one piece of content per month on that channel, but we will see. We'll see. Maybe we can make it weekly if we do Traveler Tuesdays over there or something. So in the pipeline, if anybody is interested in Against the Dark Master, by the way, which is a RPG that I've done some video on, it's kind of Rollmaster and Middle-earth role-playing inspired. There is a bundle on Humble Bundle right now that was just brought to my attention. So if you're interested in that, check it out, but you can check out my videos too if you think that will be something that you would be interested in. I thought about this, but I discarded the idea almost immediately. Because I don't feel like I know enough about Scotch. Admittedly, in the process of creating such a channel, I would probably learn some more about Scotch and maybe get some free Scotch. That's always cool. And there's like a much lower ceiling on the size of your audience with, or much higher ceiling, I should say. Scotch. So it's funny you should mention this because this is the model, right? This is Brant, the Chief, Bart. I kept wanting to say Brant. Bart Brunsheen, who's the fellow that was with the Dice Tower for a while, and then he does Bounding with Board Games, also has a Scotch channel called Scotch Test Dummies. I think it's more of a general whiskey channel, but there are a lot of videos about Scotch, and I'm not going to be as good as Ralphie is. So if I feel I cannot compete in that space, I'm probably not going to do that. RPG stuff I know a fair amount about, though, so my comfort level is relatively high there. And we will talk about how I have set this new Pathfinder campaign up. Those balking at Pathfinder because it's too D&D-like, I get that, but the new edition of Pathfinder is less D&D-like than the previous edition, for one thing. And there are good reasons why it is a good choice, the right choice, for this particular campaign, because again, I know what the different elements are that the players will be able to, and their characters will be able to interact with, and the players won't necessarily. The general idea is that you are members of an expedition who has just landed on this new and unknown land of unknown size, and you are to explore it. And there will be stuff there that you will interact with, and sooner or later, the adventuring phase or the exploration phase of the campaign will mostly be over, with some possible interludes. So anyway, all right. I have heard of this Rev de Gloire in S&T 350. I've not played it though, but it's cool to get a mag. I think magazine games have a lot to offer. Actually, maybe not in the same way that a deluxe boxed game might, where you're going to play it 150 times, but maybe. But I do think that magazine games are a great way to sample a lot of different topics, and that can be inspirational, which segues us into the topic for the evening. So, all right. So, the War Room's a good show. So, Cardboard Commander, thanks for stopping by. Holden Messerschmidt as well. Perigi, thanks so much. So, I get this too. This was my original motivation for quitting smoking in the first place, was that I was spending a lot on tobacco and I could spend that money on games instead. That turned out to work for quite a while, and then until it didn't, and then I got to figure something else out, but that's why we're still on this thing. Haven't smoked in, I don't know, but it's been quite a while, some months. So I stopped keeping track of the actual numbers. So, but I did have that one bad day where I did have tobacco. So anyway, all right. So the idea behind Inspirational War Games comes down to, it's all Mark Herman's fault. Because I have 3 inspirational war games that inspired me to become more interested in the kinds of games that they are, whether it's a topic or a type of game that I was previously not interested in or didn't know I was interested in. I think as wargamers, I think most of us have entered the hobby, whatever that was, with an affinity for certain topics or periods or whatever. Some people like air warfare, some people like World War II, whatever. Some people like air warfare, World War II. I was pretty much an East Front guy. I kind of still am an East Front guy, to be fair. It's not like I don't play lots of East Front games. And I was more of a tactical guy back in the day. But it was World in Flames that really turned me on to like big picture strategic level gaming, right? More so than other more or less strategic level games that I had played previously, including things like Guns of August. And there's probably some other examples as well. Well, this sounds cool. I would try that. All right. Hey, sometimes this is okay, right? You might find out that, especially if they were free, right? You don't have to pay anything for it. So that's a good example. Stacking Limit, strange that you should mention Empire of the Sun, because that's another one that's on my very short list to mention tonight. Because I don't think I was I think the only Pacific, at the time I first played Empire of the Sun, I think the only Pacific thing I had played at all was World in Flames, right? And that's like, half the game. I was not really super duper interested in the Pacific War as its own thing, including in World in Flames, until playing Empire of the Sun. And I think that Pacific War had a similar effect on me. It made me want to play more Pacific War games, but that was already happening when the new version of Pacific War came out. So my experience mirrors yours on this. Brian Jarvis took part in a double-blind game of Midway. That sounds pretty cool. You could totally be inspired by a style of play, like the Kriegspiel, for example. I'm going to open this door because it's like 1,000,000 degrees in here. So if you stepped in and got in a Kriegspiel or one of the command post exercises that the Armchair Dragoons do, I think it's difficult coming into one of those having not experienced it before and not be inspired by it. Not necessarily to go play more of those games, but I found that experience very enriching, right? Even if I have not done a lot of follow-up on it. So Ed Holtzman blames Jim Dunnigan because of Panzerblitz, which is understandable. Vince Ree, also Empire of the Sun, to get into CDGs. I had played some CDGs prior to that, in fact. Mariano, thanks for stopping by. So, well, that's true. Thinking about it. William Aarons, thanks for stopping by as well. Danny says that his dad was in World War II in the Pacific. My grandfather's I guess my maternal grandfather was technically in World War II in the Pacific, but he was stationed in what is now Pakistan and had no combat exposure whatsoever. My paternal grandfather did see some action on a U.S. Navy. I can't never remember the name of the ship. He was a pharmacist's mate on a ship that saw some action in the Med during World War II. So Sean Mulroy got into American Civil War after doing the family tree and then finding Robert E. Lee as the 23rd cousin 6 times removed of the wife's 3rd cousin 2 times removed. Yeah, I mean, we can always draw those relationship maps. WikiTree is very good for that, for example, if you want to see how close you are to Queen Elizabeth or, I guess, King Charles now or whatever. And I had it was a game that inspired me. I was cordially not interested in American Civil War stuff in general until perhaps 2010, something like that. It might have been as late as 2015. I don't know. It is in the last 15 years or so when I played, again, it's Mark's fault, for the people. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. There's a lot of cool history here. And of course, once I said that in my head, it's like, oh, well, we're buying stuff. So now I've got a lot of Civil War books and Civil War games and a lot of that other stuff. Don't forget to read the articles in the S&T specifically is what I'm thinking of, because they've kind of set the standard for this. But that is no less true with Against the Odds or whatever other magazine, or C3I, or whatever other magazine you've got. C3I tends to have been a more game-facing magazine than history-facing, but there have certainly been history things in it. And they have generally been quite good where they have appeared. And of course, there's the games, right, that also appear in there. So All right. E4 Airman likes Midway. Pocket String just received All Our Brothers. James Whitmer was inspired by Avalon Hill's Waterloo. So I do think it wasn't a game that got me interested in Waterloo. So I'm at the Ohio State University, and I have just decided that I'm changing my major to history. And as part of that thing, you have to take like this. I forget what the class was actually called, but it's basically a class on historical methods of doing research and things like that. And we had to do like a paper, but the paper itself was not that much work. The bigger part of the work was just like lining up all the research and doing the proposals and stuff like that. That was more the lesson. And my paper was about Waterloo. And in the process of, and I just picked that because, well, Napoleon's cool, right? And I have Chandler to use as starting point for the research. So, and I can, I'm at Ohio State, so I can find anything else I want for the most part. And then, off we went. I never took another Napoleonics class. However, there was one that I thought about taking, and I had to take a requirement, and the way the schedule that I had crafted, I had to take it in this particular semester, and it was either take the Napoleonic Wars class or take this other class, this seminar that I had to take for the major we could pick from any number of different seminars. I chose Stalinism as the class, and I found that class extremely enriching as well, but I never did get to take the Napoleonic Wars in college, so there's that. So all my Napoleonics info, such as it is all self-taught from books. Stigler says, Red Badge of Courage for inspiring to learn more about the Manassas. The first Bull Run battle is pretty interesting battle, actually. It could easily have swung either way. Tom MC mentions Here I Stand. I don't know that it certainly didn't inspire me from a period standpoint for wargaming, but it certainly inspired me. I mean, the mechanics can certainly be inspirational. For exactly the reason that Tom MC points out here is that I felt like the game mechanics did a really good job of evoking the religious conflict that is the game's main theme anyway. Perry G mentions the Patrick O'Brian, Aubrey Maturin novels by Patrick O'Brian. And I could totally see that too, right? And I won't say that the movie, maybe, I had seen the movie first, and then I've read the first 3, I think, of those books, and I've got a bunch more that I picked up relatively recently, but I need to read them. Those are cool. It takes place more or less in the Napoleonics period. It's an Age of Sail thing. If you've seen the movie Master and Commander, which is amazing, then it's those books that is kind of collated from. So it is not a direct adaptation of any single one of those novels, however. All right, so... Perfidious Albion also mentions Panzerblitz, which again I think is a very reasonable choice. Carl from the Wargame Bootcamp says Paths of Glory, which I also get. That may have been. I won't say that is. No, you know what? That's actually a really good call. I do think that for a lot of people, and I'm probably one of those people, that prior to experiencing Paths of Glory, there was this idea that World War I was basically a very boring topic to wargame. And I think a lot of people had that impression, and it was Paths of Glory that shook a lot of people out of that idea. So there's that. So yeah, I could even add that to my list, to be completely honest. All right. Jeff Beeler says September 79, he bought Battles for the Ardennes Quad, and that got him started on buying wargames on a regular basis, mostly magazine games. I've got a lot of magazine games. Gamer's Closet's great-uncle, Roland, was killed in the Pacific fighting the Japanese in the Philippines. That's some tough fighting there. So Stigler is mostly inspired by books, and I think we all are, right? We see a cool movie, like say, Master and Commander, or... Saving Private Ryan, perhaps. Some people might have gotten that from although anybody that wants to recreate that opening scene, I think that might be weird. So maybe that's not a great example. Something like that's a bad example too. Something like Glory, perhaps. Something, even Gettysburg, right? The Gettysburg film. So, Perfidious Albion also mentions Starfleet battles. I mean, I do still play some Starfleet battles here and there. I'm not very serious about it. I do not own all that much Starfleet battles stuff. I have like the main set, the advanced mission set, and like one of the alien race modules, and I'm happy with that. Believe this was a destroyer, and my grandfather was a physician, but I'm not sure. I never had the chance to talk to him about this. He died when I was a kid. Vince Ree mentions Victory Games, the Civil War. I could totally see this too, especially, given how interesting and how flavorful that game is. John Clark, if you're talking to me, I have leafed through the ASL Starter Kit magazine, but I really haven't read anything in it yet, to be honest. Tim Zales, B-17 Queen of the Skies. That's kind of interesting. Yeah, that's one of our narrative forward war games, right? And I think you're probably not the only person to have this kind of experience with that basic kind of game. And for a lot of folks, that probably was B-17 Queen of the Skies, to be honest. Stephen Rochelle said his ACW interest exploded via the combo of moving from East Tennessee to Alabama, coupled with Battle Above the Clouds. There you go. So, yeah. And that's a terrific game, too. I've played both of the campaign games and several of the scenarios for Battle Above the Clouds. Was my first GCACW game, by the way. There you go. Real Time 01. TSS, The Great Terrible Swift Sword, which I believe Decision Games is working on a new and updated edition of. We will be curious to see that. Launched collection of classic SPI series until I think I have all of the SPI. Pretty sure I have all of the they're not behind me anymore. All of the SPI Great Battles of the American Civil War series now. There might be. No, I think I picked it up. There was a couple in strategy and tactics after SPI went away. I think there were 2, maybe 3, and I've got, I think, at least 2 of the 3. What I don't have are the ones that Richard Berg self-published as Simulations Design or whatever it was. I don't have any of those, but those were more or less all redone by GMT anyway, as I recall. So this can happen with magazine games. Sometimes they are rough around the edges. All right, Brian Lindsay mentions Avalon Hill's Panzer Leader and Third Reich. And in the 80s, it was Squad Leader, and then in the 90s, World in Flames. I can get Squad Leader. That's totally reasonable, right? I mean, that's going to be, it's a much, as appealing a game as Panzerblitz is, I think that Squad Leader is a more mature game. Even the original Squad Leader, I think it simulates a lot more than Panzer Leader did. And I know that original Squad Leader had its issues as well, but most of those happened later on as they crowded the game up with expansions. Mr. Mark Herman, thanks for stopping by. All right. Cardboard Commander says Squad Leader. They went into buy D&D and came out with Squad Leader instead. Fair enough. You happen to remember exactly when this was, because I can probably tell you which version of D&D you would have been looking at the time. Squad Leader could have been, I assume we're talking about Squad Leader. That was available for a long time. And I do think that Panzerblitz is obviously a super influential game. We talked about that on the Wargames That Changed Wargames show. As dumb as I felt immediately after the show, because I missed one and had to add it like a week later. So, Real Time 01 says PGG, Panzer Group Guderian, and War in the East. Now I can understand that. Panzer Group Guderian was a revelatory title at the time. It was nobody had really ever seen anything like that. And then War in the East was, there were some people who had seen something like that, because by then Drangnok, Austin, and Unenscheiden were out from GDW, the 2 big Europa East Front games. But that doesn't mean you saw them, right? I think SPI may have had better retail store presence, at least at that time, than GDW did. I am guessing at that, however. That is totally a guess. Depends on exactly what we're talking about here, too. Oh, I remember these. Jeff Beal, the Bantam's Digest Size Histories of Warfare. Yeah, I had at one, I'm not sure if I still do or not. At one point, I had a couple of these. Oh, this is very interesting. Wargame Ramble. Always been a Civil War buff, but it was Victoria Cross 2 that got him back into wargaming in 2012. Love the movie Zulu, which I have seen most of the movie. I've never like sat down and watched it. I've seen probably the entire movie. But it was like never like I was always busy when it was on. Let me put it that way. And that includes the times when it has been on the TV at Winterfest. So it's very interesting that a game on a topic that most of us would consider relatively obscure stoked your interest in getting back into Wargame. I think that's really interesting. For me, it wasn't anything really directly related to gaming. Well, it kind of was. So at one point, and this is when I was in school, right? Thinking about, what am I doing here? What is our actual plan? I realized that all of my hobbies, whether those hobbies are wargaming or RPGs or like SCA reenactment, orbit around history in some capacity. So I said, why not history? And here we are. So I, graduated and still had my job in IT. So there's that. All right, so Perfidious Albion hesitated on Squad Leader because on the back it says that it's likely the most complex game of its type. And at the time, that's almost certainly true, right? I can't think of another even vaguely comparably complicated game in like the tactical World War II space at that time. Now, of course, now Advanced Squad Leader is more... Advanced Squad Leader is more complicated. All right, Chad Canadi's library of war games are only eclipsed by the number of military history books. So I've got a lot more games than I have books, but I also have a lot of books in digital format because you've got that thread on BGG where you can get a lot of titles, and you do see the same titles over and over again. But over time, you will see different things. I got a lot of stuff from those. They're not all equally good, however. Sometimes there's a reason that book was $1.99. So, Jeff, I end up pursuing the exact opposite strategy here. I usually play the war game first and then go buy books on it if I'm super into it. Air War was pretty complex. I'm not familiar enough with it to say whether it's more or less complicated than Squad Leader, but my guess is that it's a little bit less. That is a guess, too. Tim Greenhawk, Rising Eagles, had him dreaming in hexes. GCACW turned him into a road network snob. Here I stand, made him argue over theology. And Stalingrad 44 convinced him that he could outgeneral Paulus. It's just Paulus, it's not von Paulus. Von Paulus was something the Soviets called him because they thought he was a German aristocrat. It was just Paulus. But yeah, you probably can do better than he did. He did badly in the end, after all. All right, so Carl Fung says Panzer Leader did get him into Order of Battle and Tables of Organization and Equipment, which, I think that's understandable because that's something that somebody who is aware of those things will feel the lack of in Panzer Blitz, Panzer Leaders type of stuff. All right, so Stigler says Highway to the Reich probably got him stoked to see A Bridge Too Far. That's a fabulous movie. That's all I got to say. Ooh, Drew says that Arab-Israeli Wars, another Panzer Blitz derivative, got him into tactical Panzer Blitz type games, but it was this one particular scenario which predicted and gamed the Lebanon invasion. Okay, that sounds interesting. I've never played or seriously looked at Arab-Israeli Wars at all. Perfidious Albion mentions Avalon Hill's Submarine. Baldangle mentions Avalon Hill's 1914, a Jim Dunnigan design, actually. And having I haven't played it, but I have looked at it, and it does, considering how early it was, I do think it was ahead of its time. There's some real novel mechanics that I may have appeared there for the first time. Altaf Cockatiel mentions Andean Abyss. I think you won't be alone in finding the coin games in general to be inspirational, considering how many of them are in development right now. So yeah, this is a good point too. Wargame Ramble says that 1914 Twilight in the East was his first monster game experience and helped dispel the myth of World War I as an uninteresting gaming topic. I mean, that always has been a myth, right? But a lot of people have only really experienced it maybe in some kind of World War I dogfighting game like Ricky's War or Blue Max or something like that, and that might be interesting. But games like 1914, which is a big slog, right? I mean, or at least it turns into a big slog, and certainly Guns of August has a tendency to do that too. Considering, I think Guns of August is a very good game that takes way too long to play for what it is. Let me put it that way. Stag Limit mentions D-Day at Omaha Beach. Yeah, kind of. You guys are getting cut to pieces. That's absolutely true. So, very interesting. Scott Bell mentions the complete book of Wargames. Was this the Dunnigan book? Because I had that back in the day, and it went somewhere, I don't know where, and I reacquired it from eBay, and the exact same version that I had at the time. And it's a pretty cool book. There's some interesting things about SPI in there. And there's a lot of general Dunnigan wisdom that you can get out of that book, even if it is decades out of date at this point. Foz's Star Trek was pretty neat, I gotta tell you. I have 1914 Knock Paris, and I have yet to seriously look at it, to be honest. Oh, I would. Really? Okay, cool. I liked the first one. Ooh, Drew mentioned Star Blazers. Set off an interest in the Pacific. So I saw Star Blazers. For anybody who doesn't know, Star Blazers is this Japanese animated TV show that got imported and completely redubbed and all, and some of the story elements changed when it made it here into like afternoon, after-school television for kids, which is where I was exposed to it the first time. And I'm not sure if I just had never seen the first episode, or if I saw it and didn't know it because I was maybe 13 or something like that at the time, that the space battleship Yamato is in fact the actual Yamato repaired at the bottom of the Pacific. And that is made much more explicit, at least in the redone ones. So I missed it the first time. All right, I guess the Ken Burns Civil War stuff is on again now. That's worth watching. Just, bear in mind you're going to see a lot of Shelby Foote in it. Is my only caveat with that. It is generally very well done. Carl bounced off of World in Flames. I like World in Flames a lot. It is my favorite strategic level World War II game at this point. It is not perfect. None of them are. If I ever get mine done, maybe that'll be perfect. Or at least maybe it'll be perfect for me. That would be sufficient. I am reasonably confident that my paternal grandfather got his medical degree after the war, though. I believe that's true. So, Triumvir looks cool. Thunderbolt I've been waiting for 20 years, so, or maybe 25. I don't know how long it's going to have been. 79, well, the beginning of AD&D was 77 with the Monster Manual. I realize that's not really a lot of rules, but the Player's Handbook came out in 78, DMG in 79. So, there you go. 1977, Dave bought both Holmes D&D, which was the first set that was called the Basic Set. I had this at one point, and I wish I still had it, because it was neat. I'm not going to go buy it on the secondary market, though. It's not that neat. Because Holmes is like the first, the Holmes D&D box set, and I do think this is wargaming relevant, because nobody called it anything but a fantasy wargame at the time. I do think that the Holmes box set is like the first attempt by the D&D people to like make the game actually accessible. And I do think that it kind of succeeded at that. It was certainly more accessible in that format than it had been in the little white books, where a lot of people looked at those books and said, what am I supposed to actually do with this? And a lot of the knowledge of how to play it was actually passed in person, right, at the time. Remember, this is the mid-70s, so. All right, so, Nick Roser, biting the bullet and finally buying Last Chance for Victory. Did you manage to get it before it went out of print? Because if you didn't, you managed to pay a lot less for it. Or if you did get it before it went out of print, I should say. All right, Gettysburg. Again, so like every Avalon Hill Gettysburg game is different, except for like the first couple, and even those are fairly different from edition to edition. Remember, it originally came out on a square grid, then it went to hexes, then inexplicably went back to squares, and then it got basically totally redesigned for whatever the new edition was that came out in the 70s. So Cardboard Commander was a freshman in high school in 1979. I wouldn't be a freshman in high school for another 5 years. 1979, though, you are talking about AD&D possibly being the thing that was available at the time. 79, I don't think we had the Moldvay basic set yet. I think that was 80 or 81, I think. Harpoon was played by Tom Clancy. That is it. At one point, Tom Clancy was an advisor or on the board or something like that of Avalon Hill. I don't recall exactly what that brought to an end, and it doesn't seem like anybody mentions it anymore. But I remember that Avalon Hill talked about it at the time. Oh, there you go. Churchill occurred because there wasn't a book on that. Oh, this sounds like a terrible evening, Brant. I'm sorry. Interesting. Perfidious Albion mentions that the authors who contributed toward the Ballantine books also contributed to Purnell's History of the First World War and Second World War. Not sure I knew that. I have a couple of those, some of those Ballantine books as well. Henry, thanks for stopping by. All Bridges Burning inspired him to start looking into conflicts he wasn't yet familiar with. I have had that experience already, and I'm sure it'll happen again. But I have also had the experience of discovering some new thing in history that happened via a war game, and then suddenly I've got 6 games on the topic, or 40 as the case may be. So I think I got your meeting here, Mark. This is also true, by the way, of the Samuel Eliot Morison naval series. It was written, I think, in the late 40s or early 50s, or maybe both. And there's a lot of stuff that was still classified when that got written. So it doesn't talk about any of the code breaking or any of that stuff. So there you go. Hours making 1914 opening plans. This was one of the interesting things about, as I recall, there's like a hidden setup rule or something like that, or is it hidden movement? Something like that. I have a tendency to do this with a lot of games, but it does depend on the game. If it's something like, say, the Simonich operational games, I will tend to do this, sort by turn of entry, usually in a tray. But if it's like a big game where I'm not sure I'm playing the campaign, I might opt for a different organizational strategy. Okay. Yeah, we're obviously talking about different books. Are you talking? You're not talking about the Sandhurst thing, are you? Because I remember seeing that on shelves when I was a kid. Oh, there you go. So Joe Balkowski's Omaha Beach book is really, really good. And if you're interested in the 29th Infantry Division in particular, Balkowski has several follow-up books that basically tell the 29th's entire history for the rest of the war. So, the edition, I think this was, now that I know a little more about this situation in the 70s, I do think this was a joke. But for a while, I assume we're talking about the Tolmes D&D, which did sometimes come with a little thing of chits instead of dice. There was like a big dice shortage at some point in the 70s, and I believe that's when that happened. But they used to call that the prison edition, based on the idea that there were no dice, so it couldn't be used for gambling, so it was okay to have in prison. I now believe that to have been bullshit. I mean, it was at first. I will agree with that. And the original can be difficult to watch nowadays. I will agree. Oh, there you go. Speaking of inspiration, Perigi recently met the designer of New England Simulations. That sounds awesome. Hell's Highway looks like it's going to be a good pick, too. Let me put it that way. I have not really done much with Winter's Victory yet, but man, it's attractive. I have I have Knock Paris and the 1914 stuff from GMT, and I haven't played any of it. Well, unless we count the 1914 Glory's End. I have played that. That's a different level of commitment. So, Mazes and Monsters. Yes, indeed, I do remember this awful movie. I've even read the book, believe it or not, which was just as misinformed about the hobby at the time. So, yeah, Moldvay 81, that sounds right. That's how I can date my entry into RPGs to 81, actually, is because that's when that came out. And that's what I got. Ooh, there you go. Microprose's Red Storm Rising. I remember that. There was a board game version from, I believe, TSR that I also never played, along with the Hunt for Red October game, which I've actually been told that the Hunt for Red October game is very simple, but actually surprisingly decent for what it is. Somebody on the internet's got video on it. I cannot say that any video game wargamey experience, and I did have some even back in the day, really inspired me to play wargames at all. To me, it's always felt like a different kind of experience. I actually might feel a little less like that now, because I can think of examples of video games that I could play that feel like wargames, where I couldn't necessarily do that in the mid 90s. All right, we're trying to catch up on the chat here. Ooh, Brian Lindsay, in the late 80s, three folks attempted the longest day, months of crawling around on the floor. Only completed 8 turns. If it took you months to play 8 turns, yeah. Christopher Smith has soul D&D experience of... I remember these. Yeah, I remember. These were the big flat boxes. I don't recall off the top of my head what folks are calling those now, but I remember those boxes because you used to see them at Weldon Books, more so than the game stores. I think they were more targeted to that big box. Well, it wasn't a big box store, but you know what I mean. More targeted to bookstore market than the game store market. Carl Fung says that the lack of dice was due to the 70s oil crisis, which started after the 1973 Israeli war. So, well, right. Mark, of course, will know about the letter that SPI was putting in the games for a while that basically said, sorry, we couldn't get dice. They were too expensive. So here are some chits. We trust that you probably have some 6-sided dice laying around. And they were probably right. So Gallipoli 1915 is a different series than any of the ones that have been previously mentioned, just to get that out there. There is a follow-up called Mons the Mad Minute, which is coming out from Compass, from the same designer. So this is true. And actually it's a plot, at least in the show, in the made-for-TV movie, it's actually a plot element. The World Trade Center towers are a plot element in the movie. It's terrible, by the way. But it is young Tom Hanks, so there's that, I guess. Command and Conquer, I never played any of those. Perfidious Albion speaks highly of history of the First World War, history of the Second World War. Are we talking about... I'd have to look into this. I'm not 100% sure I'm vibing exactly what books we're talking about. David Imperato was watching The French Connection, and there were a few glimpses of the World Trade Center under construction. And of course, if you watch the, I want to say it was in the 70s, the King Kong with Jessica Lange, and I think Jeff Bridges, as I recall, which was terrible. That featured the World Trade Center prominently as well. All right, we are actually caught up on the chat. All right, the Goblin's Lair, the Haunted Tower, and the one other one. Yeah. Those big flat boxes. Somebody actually did an unboxing of one of those on YouTube not that long ago. Or at least they were talking about it. I'm not sure it was an unboxing, to be honest. I can see this. Old Messerschmitt mentions Dune. We were talking presumably about the 70s game from a team of designers who were pretty much the same people that designed Cosmic Encounter. That's a fabulous game. It is a cool, it doesn't like recreate the events of the book. It's not even trying to do that. It is trying to give you sort of to represent all of the major thematic elements in the book in a game format, and it does really well with that. And it's a cool game to play, too, to be honest. Perigi asked about D-Day at Omaha Beach. Is it replayable? Yeah, I think it is replayable, but the reason is because it's hard to win. Because once you've beat it a couple of times, you probably might not want to, maybe you don't want to play it anymore. You beat it, after all. It's getting there that will probably cause you to want to replay it. So, well, maybe. I don't plan to do a lot of D&D coverage on that channel, so... because I don't really have anything important to say. I mean, I'm not really a player. I'm not boycotting Wizards of the Coast. I don't like the game they make. So, but that's just me. But that is much appreciated, Brant. All right, so what else do we got? I think this would be a good time for us to hear from the official sponsor of the Counter Clipping Show, our good friends at Noble Knight Games. Take it away, Noble Knight.
Here at Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of board games, role-playing games and dice, war games, miniatures and paints, card games, and more. Going on 25 years now. Our rustic castle contains more game and hobby goodness than you can shake a stick at. Complete with careful packaging and the finest customer service the land can provide. You can buy, sell, trade from anywhere in the world, just like nature intended. Noble Knight Games.
I didn't write it down on the checklist for the show notes, and that's why I didn't mention this, but there is likely to be a game sale again pretty soon. I probably won't do it on the Chit Show. Again, I'll probably have it be its own thing, and that's probably going to happen in the next few weeks as well. But like pre-Origins, let me be clear about that. So, James Whitmer remembers playing SSI's Battles of Napoleon. I have, interestingly, what's it called? Eagles of Glory or something like that. It's a Paradox game that looks a lot like Europa Universalis 3, except it's pretty much the Napoleonic period on its own. So, I will have, next time Dan does a sale, I will have a list of his stuff. So I actually have that list already. So, to be clear. I did mention the game sale? Okay, good. I did? I didn't think I did. It's been a long couple of weeks, to be completely honest. So, but yeah, next time there will be a list that I will force Dan to provide me a list. He will probably change his mind somewhere in the middle of the show about something, but there you go. So, I need to clear some space. I really need to clear some space, and there may even be some RPG things that I have to get rid of too. Nothing serious. Most of the RPG stuff that I have to get rid of is just friggin' more Dragon magazines that I found. I just don't want to store those. I bought the CD-ROM, the first 250 issues of Dragon, or 200 or whatever it was, issues of Dragon magazine. I still have those. I have them all digitally. There's cool stuff in them. I don't need to store the magazines. So, yes, I showed Dan how to hit Control-C and Control-V. How about that? Barry Sporopoulos, I don't have any personal opinions on the Shakos Napoleonics games. However, I have discussed them with Jim Ozarski, who is my go-to guy when I have questions about Napoleonic games, and he says they're very good. They are also operational, which is not incredibly common for Napoleonic, so there's that. And I see Brand is jumping in and saying Ozarski is a huge fan. Yes, Jim is a huge fan of that. Will Jim be joining us at Origins this year, Brand? That's my question. It would be cool if he did. So, I'm a little concerned that the stacks of games might have buried him entirely, to be completely honest. Because he is a small fellow after all. So. Alright, let's see. Alright, Perfidious Albion asks if anyone ever tried the Avalon Hill computer games. A couple of their games has a physical map and counter set in conjunction with the computer game. I didn't play any of those. However, I did play one, Telengard, which was their roguelike fantasy dungeon crawler thing on the Commodore 64. And I had a lot of fun with that. I don't know that I could go back and play such a thing today, but I did have a lot of fun with it as a kid. I will say that. Well, we'll see. I would expect I don't expect to hear anything from GMT until their monthly update on this topic, but I would expect an update on this in their monthly update. So we will see what they say when they say it. I am curious. Ooh, Creed 41. Oh, I am positive there is. All right, Brant, thanks for stopping by. I just went through that a couple of months ago, so it was unpleasant. The actual procedure is not really difficult at all. It's the prep that's unpleasant. The procedure, I woke up, I was super loopy for like an hour and a half, just like last time. And after that, it was like, yeah, okay. I may have been loopy for longer than that. But I was super loopy for about an hour and a half. I was at the doctor's when they were in there after waking up from the procedure. And I think it is very likely that our audience here this evening does, in fact, know exactly which procedure we are talking about. So, because a lot of us have probably had it more than once. I have now had it more than once. Ooh, nice. John MC from Victoria, Australia. First miniatures rules were Battle Practical Wargaming. First text encounter was Road to Richmond from S&T 60. I think I have that in the... I don't have that in the flat. I might have it in a magazine. I haven't played that one, Road to Richmond. Nor have I played Lee Moves North. And I've got that now. Lee Moves North actually looks interesting. It's very simple. So I don't expect a ton from it. But just because it's simple doesn't mean it sucks. So there's some kind of new box that you can get, like modules, like compatibility modules for, or something like that. I have no visibility on the retro gaming scene whatsoever. So video gaming scene, that is. Retro tabletop games, that's a bit different. Jeff Beeler mentions some nice Europa stuff. Western Desert and Marina Mercure. So Western Desert and Marina Mercure were GDW's originals in that series. And then War in the Desert and Balkan Front were the GRD redos of those same games. Now, War in the Desert includes basically Western Desert, the Near East, and Torch. And Balkan Front pretty much is still just Marina Mercure, but it can be integrated with War in the Desert. I think you do need the Wavell's War material to do that, though. All right, so Mark, remind me which one was issue 61. Professor Albion loves the V for Victory games from Atomic Games, but it's a pain to get modern PCs to play them right. Even with DOSBox, the computer's too fast. I believe that. Oh, this is true, but I didn't have this particular problem. I assume they're going to ask you that question, right? So they certainly asked me that question. They were fully aware of what medications I was on at the time. Yeah, Charles Fair for his interest in the Great Northern War. Holosin Battle of the Moscow Road, 1980. I am not sure I know anything about that at all. Ooh. It might have been, actually, thinking about it. It might have been. I am a little surprised that there have been attempts by a number of current publishers to try to create digital adaptations of their games. Anybody, I think, probably recalls that we've mentioned that a bunch of times when we cover the GMT monthly updates. But Avalon Hill did it back in the day. Plus, Lock and Load has a digital adaptation available on Steam. Plus, there's Columbia Games has some digital adaptations on Steam. And even Decision has done some digital versions of stuff. It's just that I don't think you can get those any way other than getting them from Decision, which is problematic nowadays for distributing software, right? I did play Panzer General 2 back in the day, and I did like Panzer General 2, as I recall. So, Joe Okabayashi, thanks for stopping by. I kind of feel like this, too. I mean, Vassal is a different thing, right? Even if it is kind of a computer war game, if you wanted to be technical about it. But it's a different kind of experience playing a game on Vassal versus, even if it's just you, versus playing a computerized opponent, right? But of course, you do have, head-to-head play nowadays on the internet for a lot of things, so there's that. I really want... Stack Limit says that wasn't Avalon Hill. I do vaguely recall an Octung Spitfire adaptation, though. Bud Keegan. First war game was Avalon Hill 1776. Great game. Avalon Hill's Blitzkrieg made him fall in love with strategic level wargaming. I believe there was a great Sandy Desert. Was that Blitzkrieg, or was that one of the tactics games, or was that something like the Great Sandy Desert? I think that was somebody else. I'm not sure that was Avalon Hill. Let me put it that way. Maybe that joke has been done more than once, too. Yeah, Dan had the procedure not too long ago, too. His went fine, just like mine. Brant's will go fine, too. There you go. The Great Koufax Desert. That's it. That was Avalon Hill. Somebody pulled at some point later on, somebody pulled a similar thing, and I think they were trying to be clever in referring to Sandy Peterson, I think. But Koufax Desert, that was Blitzkrieg. And I mean, it wasn't difficult to figure out what they were trying to refer to. So, and a whole bunch of people recognize it once we said it right? So, Toys R Us. I did not have any experience with Toys R Us until I was like out of high school. Back in the day, we had KB Hobbies or KB Toys at the mall, and then there was a Children's Palace that did have. That's where I got Squad Leader back in probably the mid '80s, I would say. It can't have been much. When did ASL come out? Was it 85? That sounds about right. So this probably would have been about 82, 83, something like that. So, you know what? I can totally see. I have to think about this. So I believe only once did I personally spring for the fancy deluxe edition, whatever you call it, copy of a video game. That game was Warhammer Age of Reckoning. Right, the Warhammer MMORPG. And it came with a big art book, and it came with a little miniature, and it was not a nice package, but the game fell apart very quickly. So, see, I had better luck with KB because they had all kinds of stuff. It wasn't just like boxed stuff. They had modules and magazines and all that. So for me, at least in Lorain County, Ohio, maybe Northeast Ohio, because maybe we went to Great Northern some of the time, KB was the better place while it was around. But it went away in the mid 80s, as I recall, something like that, maybe late 80s. Edelsman, character names in Freedom in the Galaxy. Yeah, I mean, that was a clever game, right? I mean, it was Star Wars with the serial numbers filed off. Everybody had a more or less equivalent. Let me put it that way. Well, unfortunately, I am one of the older guys at this point, and I can't do that anymore. Honestly, though, the best way to find deals is go to conventions, and not necessarily in the dealer's room, but just like talk to people. People will sometimes bring stuff to sell. I came away from Compass Expo last time I was there with a ton of loot. I hear they have cracked down in private game sales now, but there you go. I don't know the details since that I have not been there since any such change was made. Oh, right. This was City Fight, or was this Firefight? Or I think it was one of the two. Designed by, or at least developed by Stephen Donaldson. Not Stephen Donaldson, the fantasy writer. Donnie the Punk Stephen Donaldson. This guy has a Wikipedia article about him. He was an interesting individual. He is no longer with us. Perry Sparopoulos owns Fire in the East, but only played Marina Mercure, Western Desert, and Narvik. I mean, those are all three good ones to play. Fire in the East is a large project. Well, our local one at Midway Mall in Elyria, Ohio didn't, I can tell you that. Maybe early 90s, very early 90s, but it wasn't any later than that. For hours. I don't know about the chain. KB Toys is where Real Time 01 picked up most of the GBACW games from SPI. I'm trying to remember. See, my issue is that I really probably only started going to that KB Toys in like after SPI was gone, right? So while they did have a decent chunk, they might have had a few SPI things that were sitting around for years, like box copies of Tito and stuff. But they really only had the TSR, the Spitzer SPI titles when I was there, and that's just an accident of when I was there, right? 3 years earlier, I'm sure they would have had SPI stuff. City Fight, there we go. Jeff Beeler mentions Leisure World. That does not sound like a game store to me. I get it that it probably did back in the day, but today it doesn't. Napoleon at War or Napoleon at Waterloo? Related systems, as I recall. Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that would have been a hell of a price. I don't remember that. Oh, look at this. I don't think I knew this, Mark, that Donnie worked with Mark on Next War. That's interesting. I think I had not realized that. One of our local guys, over more or less local anyway, has recently picked up a copy of the Next War and wants to play it. And I'm like, cool, let's do it. Anytime. Well, not anytime. I got to figure out when that can be done. But I mean, I'm up for it. I haven't touched that in a long time. Dawn of the Dead. That's another one that I do remember seeing floating around. Also Rescue from the Hive, whereas another one I remember seeing floating around for a few years after SPI's dissolution. Now, interestingly, by the time I didn't even put this together. I guess this is kind of a... let's mark a place here. So I didn't really put this together for a while, but I had heard, so I grew up in Avon Lake, Ohio, right? It's right on Lake Erie, right next to Avon Lake, Ohio, in the opposite direction of Cleveland is Sheffield Lake, Ohio, right? So we knew people from Sheffield Lake. And I had heard that, hey, there's this guy that runs a game store out of his basement in Sheffield Lake. And I could never get the information to look into this or whatever, and I'm not sure. This would have been around the time when I had like just been able to drive. And then like a couple of years later, he opened a physical storefront, which was open for like 15 or 20 years. And I was there pretty regularly, right in Sheffield Lake. And he had a great selection of stuff, including some old SPI stuff. And this would have been in the 90s. This was 90s era right here. All right. Jeff Beeler mentions in the 1970s they had hobby shops, not Wargame stores. There was a place in Lakewood that once I became mobile, I could go to places like Lakewood, which was not a place I could get to without a car. And there was a place called Wings Hobby Shop there, which had like half of it was like model, really more than half, probably 80% of it was like model railroading stuff. But the other, like one wall was all games, and they would typically have a lot of stuff from Avalon Hill, a lot of stuff from Victory Games, and a lot of RPG things. But it was, I mean, thinking about it, it was mostly D&D. What I bought there was like GURPS and really wasn't buying D&D at the time. Palladium stuff. They had a lot of Palladium stuff there at the time. But I bought a lot of Avalon Hill stuff there. In terms of what I've got now, it probably wasn't that much. It was probably 10 games from that store. I believe we're all talking about The Next War, the Mark's game with SPI in 79, 81, something like that. 78, perhaps. Now, if we play that, I will do video on it, too. So there's that. I got, as I recall, so I had, all right, so Prophetic Albion did a film project, interviewed the museum creator Shark exhibits. They had samples from the HMS Beagle. That's pretty cool. Stigler bought many of his first war games in Culver City, in a game shop at the Fox Hills Mall. Malls don't seem to be a thing. I mean, they are. We have a mall right up here, and it's still in, mostly in business. There's a couple that aren't, but there's one that is. Paulson says that the Flint store is still open as of last year, so that's something right there. Games Plus is supposed to be a good store. So, and Wargames West is supposed to be a good store too. I wouldn't know in either case. I do have, look at that. Look at that, 1978. Mark, I might dragoon you into that, actually. Or at least send you an email when it starts happening, so you know about it. But HUN 644 New bought his first war games in a hobby shop in Summit, New Jersey. So my first game was through the S&T subscription. Now that issue of S&T that started me on my ultimate original war game journey. I was interested in games even at the time, and I think right around that time is when I started becoming a little more interested in this fantasy game that some buddies of mine who lived too far away for the 8-year-old me to go to their house. But they were like still in town, and this new D&D thing that they were playing. And by the time I got into it, we were with those guys. It was a D&D at the time. So now we've really kind of moved malls outdoors though, right? But to be fair, there were probably too many malls before anyway, right? To like make it economically viable for all of them. It just takes one little extra matchstick on the back of the ox cart to break the ox. Ugh. I mean, I don't really have a problem. We went to the Columbus Casino not long after it opened anyway. We didn't like go to the grand opening or anything like that, but we went there like twice, I think, in the 10 years that we lived there. And in neither case were we there for more than like an hour. So I remember Aladdin's Cast at the Parmatown Mall, too. Yeah, I remember. Parmatown's closed now. Am I right about that? I could be wrong. I think it is. But I might be thinking of one of the other many malls in Ohio that are basically not operating anymore. One of the malls around here got turned into Amazon's local hub. So there's that. Wow, this is cool. Cool work if you can get it. Prophetic Albion knows a fella who is a medieval weapons prop maker in the movies. Building a trebuchet. That sounds awesome. You could talk me into participating in that particular engineering thing. Yeah, Parmatown has been demolished. Not particularly surprised. I bought So when I was working at the game store at a different mall, they opened up a kiosk at Parmatown, which I worked for, I don't know, a month or whatever it was open. So I was there a lot. And this would have been in the early 90s, mid-90s, maybe mid-90s. Honestly, what I remember, we did not do a lot of traffic. I mean, we sold a few things, but it wasn't like tons. And we spent a lot of time wandering around the mall. I do remember that I got my hardcover edition of The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan there. I'm pretty sure it was not a first printing. And that's long gone now, too. So I have paperbacks now. I'll be fine. Well, this seems like a pretty irresponsible on your part, Stigler. So you had a real Civil War officer's sword, and it's who knows where it is now. I mean, that does happen. I realize that. I'm just teasing, but still. One thing that has never really appealed to me, and again, I don't have a problem with people who are into this. Whatever. I'm into weird stuff too. This is a little weird. Maybe weirder than model railroading, but I've never really felt the itch to do model railroading. Despite liking trains in general. Trains are cool. But it's an expensive hobby, and it's, same reason I don't buy miniatures, right? It's basically miniatures, but more. No, there you go. There you go. Oh, nice. Brian Lindsay's first wargame purchase was at the Naval Air Station Hobby Shop in Millington, Tennessee. That's pretty cool. I'd love to go to London at some point, but going to London, Ohio is probably more likely to happen. Mark Hodgkinson, hello from to Thailand, I suppose. Yeah, I think it is. I mean, you don't have... There are still a lot more model railroading stores than there are wargame stores, for example, or even game stores, to be honest about it. I can understand, but I was super into it for a while, until it became obvious that the plot was just not moving. So I remember seeing pictures of Avalon Hills Gettysburg, or possibly other Avalon Hills stuff at the Gettysburg gift shop, or a Gettysburg gift shop, I should perhaps say. I was into comics. I think I got seriously into comics probably when I was about 15, and probably stayed into comics more or less seriously until I was maybe 23 or 24. And then I just kind of drifted away from it. Yeah, it was like a lot to keep up with. It was starting to become a lot to store. At one point I had like 6 big long boxes of comic books, which is not a lot for like serious comic nerds, but it was, I mean, I didn't want to move them again, that's for sure. Now I have about this many comic books. I just kept certain ones because I liked them. And I do I have occasionally picked up like a graphic novel or collection or something like that, but even that hasn't happened in years. And this is just a bandwidth thing, right? I got a bunch of friends who are still into comics. Ew. Yeah, see, I don't know nothing about this. Lee, who we game with in Columbus, is a big model railroad guy, and he may know more about this than I do. I would assume that he knows a lot more about this than I do. Let me put it that way. I don't know anything about that. But I mean, if your toaster can be on your home Wi-Fi, I don't see why your model railroad setup can't. Oh, nice. This is a Gary Gygax design, Avalon Hills Alexander the Great. Not sure if it was published elsewhere first. That's possible. I'd have to look. But they've got like decorated ones now with like the actual characters on them. You don't have to get the plain white ones anymore. That was not something I did at the time. So, God, even I didn't remember this, Stigler. And I did watch that show. It was a good show. I didn't do too much of the non-superhero stuff, but I did a little bit. Strangers in Paradise, I think, was one that was like a non-superhero thing that I was reading. It was a little soap opera, but it was like pretty good. When we were all working in a comic store, it was easy to just read the comics. So there's that. I watched Bill's new gamer video, like literally just today, actually. So he's got a nice space there. So Jeff Beeler says that Model Railroad got him into military modeling magazines, which exposed him to SPI ads. Very interesting. I actually saw the SPI ad in Science News magazine, which I think still exists as a website. At the time, it was like this, 24-page, very, very slim, rather inexpensive magazine that my parents would get me because it looked educational, and I would shut up for a while reading it. So that's where I saw the SPI S&T ads, actually, in Science News. Image was Vertigo was DC's like quote unquote mature line. 100 Bullets I never read. I did get into Sandman. It was difficult to not be exposed to it when you work in a comic store for 2 years. And I did end up liking Sandman quite a bit. So I did notice some RPGs in I think early scene in E.T. as well. There's like in Elliot's closet or something, and I want to say there's a Traveler set in there as well. I don't know if this is actually true. I was definitely under this impression at one point. DBA was the Debellus Antiquarius was a very common Ancients rules set. So, this is actually pretty cool. Bought a copy of Tarleton's Quarter at the Valley Forge Museum gift shop. That's pretty cool. I was mostly a Marvel person, but I did start branching into things like Dark Horse and Image and some other stuff kind of toward the end in the last couple of years there. No, I don't remember this. I very seldom did I read National Lampoon, though. Mad, a little more often. Don't remember seeing SPI ads in that. And yeah, Squad Leader was in the, as has been mentioned already, Squad Leader was in the final countdown. There's a short scene in like one of the mess rooms where there's some guys playing it in the background. I think I remember seeing these as well because we did get Boys Life when I was in the Boy Scouts, or the Cub Scouts, I should say. Is this a particularly newsworthy issue of Mad Magazine? I have got trying to remember what's in it. I could go get it, but it's on the shelf somewhere, and I don't know where, and I'm not going to go find it. At a flea market or garage sale or something like that, I actually scored a copy of an old 1950s astounding science fiction magazine, which has part of a Heinlein novella in it. The novella in question is Methuselah's Children, and it is in bad shape. But it's the only pulp magazine I actually own, so like an actual pulp magazine. So it's kind of cool to have for that reason. So those of us will remember that Mr. Willingham did a substantial amount of work for TSR back in the day as well. As I recall, a number of the illustrations in Deities and Demigods were his, as well as some stuff from various modules. Good artist. Willingham was a good artist. Is a good artist as far as I know. I suppose this is true. But trust me, have a resin printer if you're doing this. This does sound amusing, admittedly. I don't know. I may have leafed through an issue of National Lampoon magazine, and it didn't do anything for me, so I didn't investigate further. I don't like very many of the National Lampoon movies either, for the record. So there's that. Now, I do remember Cracked as well. I maybe occasionally read a few issues of Cracked. I may even have gotten my hands on a couple issues of Heavy Metal, but I was probably of a legitimate age to have such a thing by that point. Even though I had already seen the movie, because that came out when I was a kid. It was on cable. So I never got into any of the Bill Willingham comics stuff. I did buy a few issues of... I'm trying to remember the exact names of the publisher, but it might have been Hero Comics. It was the Champions Universe comic book line, and they did several comic books in that line, including Flair, which was like this... It was a very cheesecakey superheroine type of deal. And I had a couple issues of that and a couple issues of something else. But it was not super duper easy to get, even if I would go to the good comic store in Lakewood. Mo from Mo's Game Table. Mo, thanks for stopping by. I really like... I have seen the Heavy Metal sequel, too. It's not nearly as good, frankly. The original movie is like... It's an interesting movie for a number of reasons. One, it's got a good soundtrack. which was actually the reason why it wasn't available on home media for a long time, because rights issues with the soundtrack, as I recall. But it's an anthology piece, animated anthology piece, not uniformly equal in quality, but there was some pretty cool stuff in there. My favorite segments in the movie were probably, and this may have had something to do with the fact of when I saw it, were probably Den, which was pretty cool, which I never read any of the comic stuff for that character. And the last part of the film, which is the Tarna part. That was pretty cool. And I liked that not because of the boobs, but because it was weird and atmospheric, and I thought that was pretty neat. So... And I still think it's a pretty cool piece of animation, and it's got this weird music, and it just really worked for me at the time. Where did folks... Well, I can tell you that, but because it showed up in the mailbox. It was S&T number 77 or whatever it was. So, the ones... there was Captain Stern, which was a short segment, but it was funny. There was, I'm trying to think, there was another one in there that I thought, I haven't seen it in a long time. Okay. Yeah. So Devo did have a cameo appearance in there. The one with, So Beautiful and So Dangerous was the name of that segment. And it's the one where, this like secretary gets sucked up into the spaceship and ends up going off into the galaxy with these Nimrods. It's funny. At least I thought so at the time. I deeply regret not having been to the Complete Strategist on either of my trips to New York City. That was dumb in both cases. In one case, it was a working trip, and I had no opportunity to do any such thing. But the other opportunity, we could totally have done it. And it was idiotic of me to not do that. So... Oh, it does kind of make sense. Given the animation style, actually, I think it does make a little sense. There is a lot of drug humor in the movie, yeah. Plutonium Nyborg, man. The new. I wonder if the release of this thing is why YouTube is showing me a lot of clips from the movie. I need to rewatch the movie, to be honest about it. I haven't seen that in a long time. I can quote half of it, of course, but part of that's because everybody else can quote half of it. So... But good soundtrack too. I think Cheap Trick's on there. Blue Oyster Cult's definitely on there. No, I'd have to look. But there's a bunch of cool music on the soundtrack as well. I have seen Wizards. I was not that crazy about Wizards, to be honest about it. Ralph Bakshi did. I do remember. I will say this. I remember Bakshi's Lord of the Rings a lot better than I remember Wizards. Part of that's because I'm close to that source material, of course, but. There were like parts of that Lord of the Rings where you were like, wow, this is amazing animation and the voice acting's good. And then there's other scenes in the same movie that are like, wow, what even is this? And that's when they like ran out of money to do the rotoscoping or something like that. And it's literally just some dudes in gorilla outfits waving sticks around and run through a filter. It looks awful. So, I remember that too, yeah. It was a pretty cool scene. This is the opening scene in the film, as I recall. This was heavy metal, not Wizards. Wizards did have a lot of war footage in it. It's kind of a plot point in Wizards, as I remember. I don't know. It's, sometimes you're... It was, I mean, not exactly, but it was just as cheesy as what you're describing here, Mo. It looks bad. I'm sure you could find footage of this on YouTube. But you don't have to. You're fine. Yes, and that was totally intentional. Right at the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring, the Peter Jackson movie, when Bilbo's given the speech, and he talks about all you various whatevers and this and that and this and Brobbits and brace girdles and Proudfoots. And then the Proudfoot guy goes, "Proud feet!" And he's wiggling his toes. That shot is right out of the Bakshi Lord of the Rings. So, the Balrog. The Balrog looked pretty bad, too. Interesting casting there. Anthony Daniels, it's animated, right? So this is voice work. Anthony Daniels, the voice of C-3PO, was the voice of Legolas in Bakshi's Lord of the Rings. And, that's a good choice. John Hurt was Aragorn, which I was like, it feels weird now, but it actually does work. I think that Michael Horton might have been Gandalf. That might have been one of the radio versions, though. I'm not sure about that. So... remember that they changed Saruman's name to Aruman because they thought it would confuse the audience to have both Sauron and Saruman at the same time. I'm glad Peter Jackson didn't do that. Somebody on some social media platform, might have been Facebook. I'm not really looking at, just for the record, I'm not really looking at Facebook very often nowadays. But I think this was on Facebook, and somebody posted, they said, this is my favorite page in all of literature, and it's the Gandalf and the Witch King at the Black Gate. And I'm like, yes, that's an amazing scene. And the Rankin Bass animated version friggin' nailed it. Peter Jackson just left it out. It is in the extended version, but it's cheesy. So I follow his rationale for why they put it in the way they did when they eventually did, but it was cheesy. I didn't like it. Not well. So Rick, remember that Bakshi had Legolas doing in that role. So none of the film productions have managed to find room for Glorfindel, much to my regret, because Glorfindel is awesome. Gandalf was John Huston in the Rankin Bass 2 films, The Return of the King and The Hobbit. That is true. Not in the Bakshi one, though. It took me several tries to get through Fellowship in particular. Once you get to, for me anyway, once I got to Moria, I was on board. But it took me several tries to get there. So, which would have been interesting, but it would have been, Gandalf as Sean Connery. I probably could have lived with that. It was an obvious casting choice at the time, piece of fan casting. So I think Tom Bombadil's cool, but I 100% understand why he is not in the movie. So there was really no place to put Tom Bombadil in the movie. And don't worry, Rings of Power has introduced Tom Bombadil, and he is don't know why. He's there. Don't know why. Nobody knows why. So this is the Rankin Bass Hobbit. I have this on DVD, and we watch it like every holiday season. I think that the animated Hobbit is fantastic, and it does have the Glenn Yarborough music, and some of the Glenn Yarborough music shows some different stuff shows up in the Return of the King production as well. So I will. Okay, hold on a second. Yes, Richard Boone was Smaug, actually. Oh, hell, I mean, yeah, this is a cool game, too. I think this is a very cool game. So, Stephen Rochelle mentions the current audiobooks for The Lord of the Rings, which are narrated by Andy Serkis, but if you are going to buy them, be sure if that's what you want, be sure you're getting the Andy Serkis. They are really good. Make sure you're getting the Andy Serkis ones and not the older ones, because you can still get both, I believe. No, it's Balrog. It's Balrog. The A is a standard A, as I recall. I do believe Gandalf says it Balrog in the Moria scene in the movie, though. Generally, Generally, the pronunciations in the Peter Jackson films are quite good. Generally, in the Rankin Bass movies, they're not, but in the Hobbit one, that doesn't really make much difference, since none of the really confusing names appear in the Hobbit anyway. He does get the Return of the King does get caught with the Latin at C in Cirith Ungol. It's not Cirith Ungol. It's Minas Tirith or Minas Tirith and not Minas Tirith, for example. I still have problems with that. I mean, I think you only hear the name Balrog twice. One in Moria when Gandalf says it, and then later in Lothlorien when Legolas says it. And I could be misremembering the pronunciation guide. That's not impossible. Oh, and thinking about it, Roddy McDowall, I think, is Sam in the animated Return of the King. Now that I think about it. I think this could be cool, but I'm not a huge fan of Eliza Dushku. Just not particularly. I mean, she was good as a kid in True Lies, I guess. And she was fine in Buffy, and I never really watched Dollhouse. So, apparently there's a new Buffy the Vampire Slayer coming. I don't know how I feel about that. The original show was actually very good. It was the kind of thing that I had a bunch of friends watching and raving about, and me thinking, seriously, this looks like the dumbest friggin' thing. And then I started watching, because I had seen the movie, and then I started watching the show, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is actually quite good. So for a while, I felt like it was the best thing. This is before the golden age of television. I did feel like it was one of the best things on TV for a while. Okay, yeah, I was going to mention this, Mo, that Christopher Lee did do an audiobook reading of The Children of Hurin, which I have on audiobook on Audible. So, and it's pretty cool, I got to tell you. Oh, linen map for that. That's cool. I think the map is attractive. That's true. Remember, they had to change it. The D&D people in the original edition, there were Balrogs and hobbits and ents in the game, and they got, I don't know how far along in the legal process this got, but it didn't end up with an actual lawsuit. But in subsequent later editions, those were changed to halflings, treants, and Baelors instead of Balrogs. So. And unfortunately, the new Pathfinder 2nd edition doesn't have any of that stuff, but who cares? I don't need any of it. So, linen map for that sounds pretty sweet, to be honest. Real-time 01. This would have been cool. I mean, remember, and you'll know this, Mo. Remember that Christopher Lee was the only person involved in the films, at least at the cast and crew level, to have met Tolkien personally. So he ran into him in a random pub, decades before. And he was a huge fan and wanted to play Gandalf, and then was a little too old to play Gandalf by the time it came time to play Gandalf. So they're making some kind of sequel or something. I don't know anything about it. I'm kind of making it a point to stay away from it. I'm sure learn more about it at some point, but my confidence level is low. But it's not, I don't believe it's Amazon working on it, so there's that. But the Amazon had nothing to do with the Hobbit trilogy, and that was mostly shit too. So somebody mentioned this, probably knowing, watch this. Let me mention Tolkien, and then here I go 20 minutes later. Blah, 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 blah. All right, so the way I can give you the actual background on this. So, deities and demigods. The first two printings contain two additional mythoi, as Gary would have said. The Cthulhu mythos and the Melnibonian mythos from the works of Michael Moorcock. Now, and also included the Fritz Lieber Nuhan, I'll call it Nuhan mythos. From the Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser stuff. Now, I mentioned this. I actually had read the first two books as a teenager and didn't like them. I actually picked up the first Stratford and the Grey Mouser book again, and I'm going to give it another shot. Having read a first couple of pages of it, kind of looks like I'll appreciate it a little more. Because unlike, say, Howard or even Moorcock, Lieber is trying to be witty, and Howard and Moorcock really didn't do that very much. And I might be able to like recognize that better now than I did when I was 14. So the third and later printings of Deities and Demigods took out the Melnibonéan and Cthulhu mythoi. So by the time that came out, there was already an agreement in place with all three parties, with the Arkham House people, and with Moorcock's people, and with Fritz Lieber's people, with Chaosium to do material on that. And that is why I think in the second, maybe third, it might be the third printing actually of Deities and Demigods, there's like special thanks to Chaosium at the bottom, but they had already taken the Pantheons out. So they worked it out. There never got to that. Also never got to the point of a lawsuit, but they worked it out. In the Lieber's case, at least, what had happened was that one of the two companies had reached out to Lieber personally, and I think that was actually TSR, I think. And the other, Chaosium, had reached out to Lieber's agent, and Fritz never bothered to mention to his agent that he already, had a contractual or licensing agreement with TSR. So it would have put TSR, according to Greg Stafford, and this has been written in a couple of different places, TSR said, no problem, we'll just sue Lieber. And Lieber is, a poor old author who's, with half a liver left at that point. And Greg Stafford said, no, we take it. It's fine. We'll just drop it. So, but they did end up doing games for the Moorcock stuff, including Stormbringer, which is the first Elric game. There were, I believe, 5 different editions of that. And of course, Call of Cthulhu, which came out, I want to say in 83, something like that. This was Eldritch Wizardry, actually. Gods, Demigods, and Heroes what had an unmemorable cover. The Sacrificial Maiden was on Eldritch Wizardry. Yeah, it was not correct. I mean, I don't like those Star Wars movies. Let me put it that way. This is definitely true. I mean, they literally put a disclaimer in the latest. In if you buy like an electronic version of the current productions from Wizards of the Coast, I should say, they put a little disclaimer in it in the front that says, there were some things that they thought were okay back then that aren't okay anymore, and just bear that in mind. Different time, blah 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 blah. I am cool with that as long as they are providing us with the important historical materials and not actually making changes. And in the current materials, I don't care because I don't like the game. So I'm easy there. I don't think I've ever seen this one. I kind of wish they wouldn't too, because I feel like it's unnecessary. Now, if they want to say have a general, statement of, hey, we think it's, these are historical artifacts of this hobby, and it's important that they be seen, accurately from what they were when they were released. But we don't necessarily agree with everything that was said in those things. I mean, I think that should be obvious, and they shouldn't have to say that. But this would not be certainly the first thing that Wizards of the Coast has fucked up in the last couple of years either. So, oh, I've seen this. Yeah, this floats around every couple of years. Somebody will post there was some BBC interview back in the day of Peter Cushing and his little military models or whatever they were. We had I'm going to say, and this would have occurred in the mid 90s, something like, no, this would have occurred in the early 2000s, I believe. I played, and this was not something I did, was to play D&D. I was playing other stuff. I was playing all kinds of other stuff. Playing D&D was never on my priority list of things to do in that era. So I was like, oh, really? And I got talked into playing in a birthright campaign, and we had a lot of fun in that birthright campaign. I will say that we had tons of fun. Birthright's got some issues but that those issues do not require a disclaimer. So, that sounds interesting. There was a show on one of the educational channels. It may have been the History Channel, but it may have been a channel that shows history rather than the History Channel, where they actually used the Total War engine to like simulate the battles, which I thought was a neat idea. To be fair, I believe the Birthright stuff was already on the way up in terms of price and collectability by the time Matt started talking about it. I believe that to be correct. And don't forget that there has been a general trend of old D&D stuff getting fairly expensive nowadays, too. So I don't know that the Birthright stuff is... I actually have the core Birthright set on my Noble Knight wish list just because I want to keep an eye on it. I think it runs... They have a shrink-wrapped copy for something like $250, but it's a shrink-wrapped copy. And you do have to pay attention with those particular products to whether they are punched or cut or not. They came with cards to represent the military units, and if you cut those out of the sheet, they're easy to lose. I might need to look this up, actually. I will say that we mentioned on the show the other night that the Abominable Dr. Phibes is awesome. That is on YouTube. I'm not sure if the second one... Did I watch the second one? No, I did. I watched the second one on YouTube. I'm not sure that the first one is, but it probably is. So, all right. I think we're going to just stick... I'm not organizing it this time. I'm just kind of clipping and see what we get done, and I'll organize it all. So I'm really just organizing by counter color at the moment, or markers. The markers in a bunch of different colors. So, British vehicles, for example. So we're going to add a bunch of British vehicles here tonight. And one strange lone Finnish tank. I don't know why. It was just loose. I have not done anything with the Finns. So for the record, my ASL Germans and Soviets are fully clipped and punched and organized. So I could play ASL. I just can't play anything that doesn't have... well, I got some Axis miners. I got the French, at least the infantry stuff, clipped and organized. Haven't done the Japanese. I've got some of them clipped, but I haven't actually done the organization yet. I will do, once I have that organizational system in place, I will also do an ASL organization video. So, all right, folks, I think we're going to give it about 10. We're going to leave off about 10 minutes early this evening. So I have just, in fact, been clipping the informational counters, actually. So there you go. Only volume 4 to go. See, you're making progress. You get fast at it, and you get to the point where you don't really need to pay very close attention, and you can just clip while watching TV or whatever. I am clipping while watching Andor. I have watched the first 2 episodes, which are very good so far, but like nothing's really happened yet. So I believe episode 3, some shit will go down. It is not the only Finnish counter. It's just one that was somehow loose in the box. All right, folks, I am going to bail just a few minutes early tonight because I got, like I said, a long day tomorrow, a lot of driving. Hopefully everybody got something out of the show this evening. I would like to thank everybody for stopping out this evening, and I'd like to give a big shout out to both the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair. And again, we couldn't keep doing this without the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair. Or Noble Knight Games, for that matter. Don't forget there will be a Noble Knight sale coming pretty soon. Don't forget the affiliate link in the video description. So everybody have a great rest of the night, and we'll see you all again next week.